Jake Paul knocks out an out-of-shape retired UFC fighter with a hip replacement who was known for not having any boxing skills at all, and his tween fans lose their minds.
Oh my God! Oh my God! You knocked him out! Oh my God! Oh my God! No!
Alright mate, calm down. Give your Jake Paul poster a kiss and get your head down for the night.
That whole event was super weird.
From the channel that brought you YouTube fighters are a joke. YouTube fighters are still a joke.
Here's what real fighters have to say.
I would tell him this. I would tell him, bro, I would literally beat you with one hand.
Someone needs to put an end to this.
And here's Jake Paul flashing his money from his recent stunt fight. It's like a toddler playing in a sandpit. The comments section was beautifully brutal, however. Who should I retire next? He meant to say, who should I fight that retired next? $65 million made from his adoring tween fans, and he's still not fought anyone who can actually punch. That, to be fair, is talent.
Well, guess he get to pretend to be a fighter for a little while longer. They're gonna have to give him somebody real now. He gonna have to fight somebody real.
Jake Paul is a spoilt YouTube blur that is imitating as a legit boxer. He made himself a cute belt. And this selfie is on point and to the point of my video. In the process, has chosen to disrespect legitimate combat athletes by crashing a recent UFC event to market himself while simultaneously managing to never have fought anyone with a legitimate striking background. That is high-level coordination right there. Jake Paul is at a UFC fight and stole all the attention from the matches tonight. Didn't even know there was a UFC fight until the F Jake Paul chants went viral. They might have to cut him a check, LOL. Jake Paul retweeted.
Didn't even know there was UFC, did you, mate?
With incredible fighters like Rose Namajunas, Valentina Shevchenko, these two. To be clear, Jake Paul has now beaten another YouTuber, a retired 40-year-old basketball player, and now a retired wrestler with a hip replacement. But his tween army of not understanding anything about combat sports now profess Jake Paul to be the greatest boxer on the planet. He called out Conor McGregor, was then meant to fight Michael Bisping. What happened to that? How did they get to Ben Askren? When I heard it was Ben Askren, my heart sank.
But as far as a boxing wise goes, if you had to pick one fighter that's, doesn't have hands, he never had striking. So then he retires from MMA, he gets a hip replacement, and then he gets called out to do a boxing fight. And now he's labeled, he's a fighter. He's a mixed martial artist, but he was really known for not having hands at all. And so now you got Jake Paul with his elevated ego.
And by the way, get well soon, Chris Weidman. But his pay-per-view sales are real because influencers run the world now. That has been established. But this awkward-looking little bald dude still thinks he's a joke. And so to be fair to Jake Paul, he can hit hard. He does have power, clearly. And he is much better than the average YouTube boxer.
That guy can crack.
Yep.
You do not want to get hit by him.
This is the fight we all want to see.
He's a vlogger, mate, which basically involves girls twerking by his pool. But he just knocked out Ben Askren, who has no striking skills at all. And if you don't follow MMA, Ben Askren was known as being an elite wrestler who would win his fights by closing the distance quickly, getting hold of his opponents, grappling them, and in many cases winning with ground and pound on the mat. And he was a champion in Bellator and ONE FC. And what was interesting about when he came to the UFC was, will his wrestling approach be successful against some of the highest competition in the sport? No, it wasn't. He was brutally knocked out.
And he's doing it smart. He's fighting people that are not quite good enough. Like the Nate Robinson guy was a good athlete, but not really a fighter.
That's my guy, man. Nick's.
Oh, my
I felt
God.
really bad about that.
These Paul brothers, Logan and Jake, they're making some big money moves. They're making a lot of money. And they got everybody talking about him, including us.
And also, by the way, I am a massive Ben Askren fan. But in this case, he was in no fit state to fight. He was clearly out of shape, clearly had limited mobility and movement, clearly has no boxing skills.
It wasn't good.
It was terrible.
Well, when you watch the punch,
his hands are down. His hands were down the whole time.
Well, Ben was just standing still. That's the part of the problem. Also, Ben had a hip replacement.
I know. He doesn't look good. He didn't look good.
Didn't look good physically.
And turned up for the huge payday, stood there looking like a human punch bag. And I am a big fan of Ben Askren, genuinely. But he sold out.
Askren, if he got what they said he got.
They said he got $500,000
and then
guaranteed,
points,
and then
what
the
they
pay-per-view was
generated.
crazy.
I'm happy for Askren. He got knocked out.
Dad, it's over. Let him do what he got to do. He just took care of his family forever.
And the thing about all these podcasters and celebrities and people who are commenting on Jake Paul, a lot of them, you got to understand as well, would love that guy to be on their show, would love to interview the guy. They're never going to be that controversial against him. And I don't care about all these other YouTubers supporting their platform mate and hyping him up and hyping themselves up. A FaZe wants to fight him next. Stop it. Behave yourself. He needs a real fight.
What's up, YouTube? It's your boy FaZe Temper. Listen.
He needs a real fight with an active fighter who has a legitimate background in boxing, where Jake Paul will make another big check and also get a reality check. Uncle Dana sums it up pretty well.
You're getting me talking about this fucking guy again. He's getting hand-picked opponents, and God knows what else is going on with that whole thing. It's all, there is a market for that.
And so this is my underlying opinions on these YouTube celebrities becoming boxers. It's disrespectful to the journey of a combat athlete, the sacrifices they have to make, the long, hard road, the many ups and downs to get to a point in their career where they are in the limelight, where they can try and make money for their families, for example. It's a hard, brutal sport. These people develop their skills and their discipline and their life skills over many years, and there's a respect for the martial arts. And these YouTube celebrities who just skip the queue and use their fame to host these exhibition fights just is not something that I value. I also love the respect that martial artists show each other, most commonly after fights, and we had an example of it from the recent UFC. And Lance from Disney fame skips the queue, makes millions of dollars now from fighting, and supply and demand. I get it. I get people want to watch him fight, so let's him have a real fight. Lance was great in that, to be fair, and he's that one. Just for any of his fans who want to chronicle his Rocky boxing story, he's the guy on the poster doing the Michael Jackson impression. But to the point of my video, he then goes to this UFC event and makes a ruckus in the crowd to market himself, to hype himself, disrespecting the athletes on that card who have trained incredibly hard to get to that point. And of all the people he decides to trash talk to, Daniel Cormier, one of the greatest of all time, two-weight world champion, now retired. The classic YouTube idiot move of make a ruckus in the crowd. We've seen this with Bradley, Martin and Vitaly and all these guys before, with their inflated egos and their huge sense of self-importance, and they try to make the event about them rather than the great combat athletes who have trained and are performing on that night. And I'm personally one for the integrity of sport, where the cream rises to the top and where athletes have to go on this journey over many years to achieve their goals. And Rose Namajunas' tears on that card when she won the UFC title show it all. The journey she's been on, the hard knocks she suffered, what winning that belt meant to her. This dude is a spoiled, entitled YouTuber that needs to stop running his mouth and actually step in the ring against someone who can punch. I mean, the way this dude talked to T-Wood makes my skin crawl. All these kids are going to get taught a lesson, I swear, and I can't wait for it. At J. Leon Love, you can't fight. Better respect dudes like Tyron Woodley before he puts his hands on you. He ain't Ben, okay, fat boy? Jake Paul, in the words of DC, fight someone real.
Guess he get to pretend to be a fighter for a little while longer. They're gonna have to give him somebody real now. He gonna have to fight somebody real.